Hello and welcome to Outside Views. Today we're diving into a story that's all too familiar. British cherry-picking in their relationship with the European Union. Yeah, it's back. It's October 24 and Britain's new Prime Minister Keir Starmer just had his first official visit to Brussels. I talked already about this week. And for those hoping for a new era of UK relations, well, it's been a bit of a reality check. Starmer set out to bring Britain closer to the EU, or so it seemed, but instead of paving new paths, he made it very clear where Britain will not be moving politically. No return to the customs union, no return to the common internal market, and definitely no return to free movement of people. In other ways, a continuation of the same old British stance that we've seen for years. It feels like a déjà vu. The cherry-picking that Brussels has long accused the UK of, the selective engagement, the demands without the full commitment, it is still very much alive. It's like Britain wants the benefits once again without the obligations. Sound familiar? And let's talk about this. Brussels had hoped for a change. They thought maybe, just maybe, Starmer would be different. There was even talk of easing tensions, of a restart in relations. But in reality, Britain remains a complicated partner for the EU. This has been true since long before Brexit, and it's only gotten more complicated since. The EU has had to endure a revolving door of British leaders, each coming in with a different message, none lasting long enough for a solid direction. And now with Starmer, it's yet another version of cherry-picking. Take, for example, the EU's proposal to allow young people between the ages 18 and 30 to travel freely between Britain and the EU for a year. Seems like a reasonable step toward reconnection, right? But even this modest idea was shot down. And Starmer's stance? No visa-free stays for students, no special allowances. The door is closed. It's not surprising then that the skeptics in Brussels feel vindicated. Starmer talks about making Brexit work for the British people. But the fact that he needs to make Brexit work at all is itself an admission. Brexit has not been the success story many were promised. Far from it. The economic impact alone tells the story. Trade with the EU has suffered, and attempts to replace those agreements with bilateral deals have largely flopped. I mean, in the case of trade, EU member states can't, but nevertheless. Sure, there are agreements with Australia and New Zealand, but these are hardly enough to offset the losses. And in fact, experts estimate a 3 to 5% hit to the UK's GDP as a direct result of Brexit. Not exactly a ringing endorsement. And what about the promise to fix the NHS? That was a major selling point for Brexit. More money for healthcare, better services. But here we are, with the NHS struggling, staff shortages everywhere, and even critical patients waiting for treatment. It turns out slogans and promises don't pay the bills or staff the hospitals. And let's not forget immigration, another key part of the Brexit promise. Fewer immigrants, better jobs for British workers. How did that work out? It didn't. Illegal migration has actually increased since Brexit. And now Britain is scrambling to make new agreements with the EU to control the influx across the channel. And this year alone, over 40,000 people have already crossed into the UK. And when it comes to immigration, it seems there is at least some hope for cooperation. David McAllister, the chair of the European Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, sees potential here. He's right in saying that irregular migration must be urgently tackled, but Brexit has made that harder. Brexit weakened coordination on immigration policy, and in doing so, it increased irregular migration. It's yet another example of how Brexit's far-reaching consequences, something the EU and Britain are both paying the price for. And McAllister didn't mince words. He called Brexit a historic mistake with massive consequences for the British people and their economy. And yet, in Britain itself, there's hardly any appetite left to discuss Brexit. Most people just don't want to hear about it anymore. They are tired of the constant reminders of what went wrong. But of course, ignoring the problem doesn't make it go away. That's one of the reasons why I'm not stopping to talk about it. Starmer is set to met with Ursula von der Leyen and will meet her again this autumn, and there will be regular summit meetings between the UK and the EU in the future, as it seems. They've got a list of issues to address here: economic challenges, irregular migration, climate change, energy prices, and so on. But can these talks really lead to substantial change? Can they undo the damage that's been done? Or is it just another exercise in cherry picking, trying to take what works and ignore what doesn't? It's ironic, really. Starmer wants to make Brexit work for the British people, but more and more Brits believe it's Brexit itself that's the problem, and they are right. Polls show that the majority of Britons now think Brexit has harmed the economy. Welcome to the club. Only 1 in 10 sees Brexit as a success. I want what they are smoking, by the way. The idea of rejoining the EU is growing in popularity, and people want the opportunities they have lost. The freedom to live, work, and travel in Europe without barriers. But here we are, with the UK government doubling down on red lines, unwilling to revisit even the simplest aspects of cooperation. It is clear that Starmer is walking a political tightrope. On one hand, he needs to acknowledge the failures of Brexit to regain trust. On the other hand, he has to appease those who are still clinging to the idea that Brexit was a good move. And this balancing act means that real progress is unlikely anytime soon. Instead, we are left with more of the same. More cherry picking, which won't work. More promises to make things work without the willingness to do what's needed to make them work. And in the meantime, Britain continues to drift, neither fully in nor fully out, so stuck with the worst of both worlds. And it's a reminder that cherry picking comes at a cost, and you can't have your cake and eat it too, as the saying goes, but still some people believe that. For the British people, the consequences of that approach are all too real. Whether it's the economy, the NHS, or young people losing out on opportunities. The price of these decisions is being felt every day. So what's next for UK-EU relations? It's hard to say. Regular meetings and polite diplomacy can only go so far when the fundamentals haven't changed. If Britain truly wants to reset its relationship with the EU, it will need to rethink its approach. And that means moving beyond cherry picking, beyond red lines, and towards genuine partnership. Whether or not that's possible, only time will tell. So thank you for tuning in to Outside Views. And if you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content on Brexit and UK politics. See you next time. The next video is right here in the end screen.